This is a $30,000 video game weapon made from some of the rarest materials in the world, but how much damage can it do in real life?
3, 2, 1.
To find out, I also tested a $200 weapon with real explosives to see how much of a difference budget would make, but to give this a fair test, I needed to find a $1 weapon. So I did some research and found this 3D model for free of these retractable Wolverine claws that only use $1 of filament, since there's the Wolverine game coming out. And considering it was only $1, it was actually pretty cool. However, now with 200 times the budget, can I make a weapon that's 200 times more powerful? I considered a Halo sword, which would actually be sick, but it's already been made a million times and I wanted to do something new. But then I had an idea. What if I made that spiky blue turtle shell in Mario Kart and make it actually explode in real life? But how can I actually do this for $200? There's two parts to this. First, I needed to build the shell, so I found a model online and modified it so I could fit something in the center that would actually allow it to explode, which meant I needed to learn about explosives. In order to make an explosive, you only need one thing: a lot of pressure, which could be as simple as shaking a bottle of pop, or putting baking soda and vinegar in a plastic bag, or mixing high concentration hydrogen peroxide with this chemical right here, which can create a huge reaction which when contained... But I needed something bigger. So I got some of this stuff called tannerite, which when shot creates a huge explosion. And I put a jar of it inside the shell and glued the whole thing together to see what would happen, and this was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'm ready. The melon survived. Oh, the melon!
The melon survived.
No, I wonder if that's just the heat.
Wow. I just annihilated it. That's crazy. However, that was just the beginning, because now it was time to bring the budget up to $30,000, and this might be one of the coolest projects I've ever been able to build. Because this started when Clash of Clans called me up and asked me to make a new weapon that they just dropped November 1st, which is an overpowered meteorite hammer that reduces 50% cost and building time and doubles collector production and capacity, but they asked me to make it in real life with real meteorites. But I did some digging online and found that meteorites are really expensive, like really expensive. To get a full-size block the size of the hammer could literally cost up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. However, I wanted to find a way to make this since I've been playing Clash of Clans since I was like 10, and I wanted to impress them with something absolutely incredible. So I started by ordering $15,000 worth of meteorites, but this is where I ran into my first problem. We finalized everything in mid-October, which meant I only had 2 weeks to pull this off, and shipping all the meteorites with even the fastest express shipping from all over the world would take a week of that. So in the meantime, I started on the design. This was the reference image I was working with, and the instructions I had were basically, what would it look like in real life? Now, to be honest, in real life, it would probably just look like a rock. But with a $30,000 budget, I needed to figure out a way to make this not only stand out and look incredible, but also be incredibly powerful. And this is when I discovered one of the really cool properties of meteorite that is literally impossible to get on any other material on planet Earth. Look what just came. Let's open it up. So this little guy should be a rock. Yeah, and it's not cut at all. Yo, it looks like a normal rock. It feels heavier than a normal rock though, because it's iron and nickel on the inside. Like this feels pretty heavy, like iron. Anyway, okay, let's open the other one. Any meteorite with an iron core will have this crazy effect known as the Widmanstätten pattern. Here's one of the plates. Okay, and you can see this pattern on there that looks like a bunch of kind of scratches almost. That pattern is not something that you can make on Earth. Like this literally can only be found in meteorites. And the reason why is because these are different types of metals, and in order to get them to crystallize like this, they need to cool down really slowly, like 1 degree over like a million years, and that's why it costs so much money. So I knew I needed to make the pattern visible on the hammer, but that was just the first step. Since the project was so big, I knew I needed a bit of help. So I met up with my friend Jordan, who is a professional jeweler and has a ton of experience making really intricate things, and we put together a plan. The hammer had 3 parts: the hammer head, the glowing cracks, and the handle, and each of them had to be perfect so I could actually impress Clash of Clans. So starting with the head, the plan was to get a good reference photo to then convert it to a rough prototype that I could 3D print to see the size and shape of everything. I wanted it to look like a natural cracked meteorite with some sort of glowing core as if the energy in the middle was just exploding outwards, and to make sure it was incredibly durable, I bought a $4,000 100-pound titanium brick, which I took to a machine shop in order to make a solid core that the meteorites would go on top of. Then after making sure everything was perfect, we needed to remake the design from scratch and map out every single cut of meteorite to place it perfectly on top of the face of each rock of the titanium core. But this is where we started to run into some issues.
Yeah, so because this is such a huge block of titanium, you have to go quite a bit slower because the tool is always in contact with at least this much of the block.
It turns out titanium is really hard to cut through, given it's nearly twice as strong as steel, so in order to cut it just into the size of the brick alone, it took 2 days. Then the plan was to CNC all of the cracks on each side, which we would later make glow, and although the first 2 small sides were cutting perfectly, when we started the first big face, the cutting tool broke. So we tried that again, and it broke in the exact same spot.
So we basically got through the first 2 faces, like the end faces, the small ones, no problem with 1 tool. But then when we got to the next one of the longer sides, we had a tool break and I couldn't figure out why. And just the way the cutter, the angle that it was coming in, it was diving right into one of those rocky surface textures and really loading up the tool. We got to the last tool, like the last one of these we had.
We still had 4 more faces to engrave and only 1 cutting tool left. Not to mention, I now only had 3 more days to get this done. So in the meantime, while it was getting cut, Jordan and I worked on the second part of the hammer, which was getting the cracks to glow. And we had some really interesting ideas. I 3D printed and painted some more hammers so we can test out 3 different ideas. The first one was just to use regular glow-in-the-dark powder to see what that would look like.
Here's what we're gonna do. The reason why this UV resin is so good, this you can actually cure with UV light. I'm gonna actually add it in and sculpt it as we go. So I'll be able to get it to maybe look like it's actually like water, kind of like floating water.
Alright, let's see this in the dark. Actually looks pretty sick. Alright, so one of the issues we're running into right now is this UV glow powder is not as bright as we'd like it to be. And we really want to get this hammer to like glow. So we had the idea to put a UV light strip behind the glow-in-the-dark powder to see if we can get it to glow brighter. So right now the lights are sticking out a little bit. If we were to do this on the real one, we'd have to make the crevices just a little bit deeper. This is just a proof of concept to see what it looks like. And while it was a cool idea, you could totally see all of the dots where the LEDs were, so we wanted to try one more thing. This is a normal LED.
This is gonna be way better.
That's glowing so much. Got it made, time to plug it in. Oh, that actually looks sick. But to take it even further, I bought a massive piece of opal, and the plan was to crush it up into smaller pieces to diffuse the light and make it look even more natural. I think it's pretty clear to see which one looks the best. This was a cool concept though. UV lights under UV glow powder. That means that we're gonna have to actually put all of the batteries and circuitry inside of the handle. Oh, that's gonna make things so much harder. But because we were using an LED, now we had to worry about a battery. So it was back to the machine shop where we needed to create a center for the battery to be hidden and finish cutting everything. Luckily, Spencer at the machine shop fixed the problem and we were able to cut out the rest of the block with that very last mill bit and finally finished cutting the titanium core with only 24 hours left.
5th day machining, it's finally done.
And we still needed to do the third part of the plan, which was the handle. And we also had a really cool idea for this as well. We started by using a titanium rod, which we added some threading to make it actually screw into the hammerhead, which as you can see was really heavy. Then cut a piece of hardwood, which we put in the lathe and stained it to make it look really nice, but the part I really liked was at the base, we wanted to make an end cap that would actually have the Clash of Clans emblem engraved on the bottom. So, using Jordan's $20,000 high-powered laser, we spent 12 hours engraving a custom 3D design into the titanium. Then finally, it was time to put everything together. However, before doing so, I wanted to see how powerful it was. And I wanted to test this before putting $15,000 of meteorite on the outside. So we've got a crane and a watermelon. Let's drop the hammer and see what happens. now that I knew the hammer was super powerful, we began putting everything together, filling in the cracks, adding the lights and the batteries, the handle, and we had everything perfect except for one thing: the meteorites. If you thought this was stressful getting everything done in time up until this point, there was an even bigger issue. Backtrack to the original plan, we were gonna cut all the meteorite pieces out using this $100,000 wire EDM machine, which passes electric current through a wire to get these incredibly fine and precise cuts through any conductive material. But when we tested cutting this actual meteorite rock open, there were two problems. It was starting to work, but it was really slow. Like, really slow. It was gonna take hours just to get through. Not to mention, the wires kept breaking, we ran into coolant leaks, but it was working slowly until we ran into the second problem. You can see this graph here shows a huge spike downwards, which basically means it found a point in the rock that wasn't conductive, so it wouldn't be able to cut through. We needed to find a different solution. So we took it to another place to get it water jet, where it runs a really thin stream of high pressure water, and once we had all of those pieces done, there was just one more step before attaching it to the hammer. But this part was kind of scary because it could actually ruin everything. Even though you can see these patterns, there's actually a way to see it even better. It's called acid etching, where you basically use literal acid to eat away at some of the metals in order to make the pattern stand out even more. I actually got on the phone with a real meteorite expert who walked me through the whole process so that we could make sure not to screw it up. And there was a ton I needed to learn about different types of meteorites and how different acids affected different things. We needed to clean it really well with alcohol, bake it in the oven. But after all that was done, we could finally permanently attach it to the core and then manually Dremel everything down to make it look supernatural. And then it was time for the final reveal. This is footage of them showing my final result at an actual Clash of Clans board meeting. And this was kind of like a childhood dream. Like when I was playing Clash of Clans in middle school, trying to build a better base than all of my friends, I never thought the game would one day sponsor me to actually bring it to life. And I've literally never made anything like this before, and the 2 weeks of prep time was incredibly stressful, knowing I could possibly screw up a $30,000 project. But also, I feel like all that effort is what truly makes something feel worth it. And in the end, they loved the design. And of course, finally, the Meteorite Hammer is now in-game. It arrived during Hammer Jam and is now introducing an all-new meteoric upgrade of Town Hall level 18. So check out Clash of Clans if you haven't already to help me make more videos like this in the future, and thank you for watching.